Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder if standing on your head might change the way you speak? Okay, maybe not that extreme, but what about just being a little less stable on your feet? Does that affect your voice today? We're diving into a fascinating study that explores how our bodies influence our speech, even when we might not realize it. This study asks a simple yet profound question. When our body has to work harder to keep us balanced, does it change how we talk? Think about it. We're often standing, walking, moving around when we speak. Our bodies are doing a lot of work to keep us upright. The researchers here wanted to see if demanding more from our balance system changes our voices. So here is what they did. They gathered a bunch of people, over 100 of them, and had them play a word-guessing game, kind of like Taboo, where you have to describe a word without using certain other words. The key part was how they stood. Half of the people stood on a normal, stable floor. The other half stood on a wobble board, which is basically a round board on a half sphere that makes it much harder to stay balanced. This wobble board condition really cranked up the demands on their body's balance system. They looked closely at what the clue giver said, and they measured two main things: acoustic properties of their voice and their speech fluency. Acoustics are things like how high or low your voice is and how loud it is. Fluency has to do with how smoothly you speak, like how often you pause or use filler words like or And here is what they found. When people were on that wobbly board, their voices actually changed. Specifically, their fundamental frequency, which is basically the pitch of their voice, went up, and their amplitude envelope, which is related to the loudness or intensity of their voice, also increased. So, when their bodies were working harder to stay balanced, their voices became a little higher pitched and a little louder. But here is the really interesting part. Even though their voices sounded a bit different, their fluency didn't change at all. They spoke at the same speed, paused for about the same amount of time, paused about as often, and used filler words just as much, whether they were on the stable ground or the unstable wobble board. This is a key takeaway. Wobbling around affects the sound of your voice, but not how smoothly you get your words out. So, why does this happen? The researchers suggest that maintaining balance is a pretty demanding task. When you are on a wobble board, your brain has to constantly send signals to your muscles to keep you upright. This postural control really uses up some of your body's resources. Speech production also requires a lot of precise motor control, but it happens in a different part of your body. The theory is that when your body is busy balancing, it might subtly adjust how it supports speech. Imagine your body getting a bit more tense, or your breathing changing slightly to help you stay up. These small physical adjustments could then influence the way your vocal cords vibrate. That is your fundamental frequency. And the overall energy in your voice, that is your amplitude envelope. This isn't the first time researchers have looked at how body position affects speech. Studies have shown that even lying down versus standing up can make small changes to your voice. And when people make gestures while talking, that also uses up physical resources and can affect their voice. So, this study adds to that by showing that just maintaining stability with your lower body can also ripple up to affect your voice. Now, you might be thinking, doesn't balancing also use up brain power or cognitive load? And yes, it does. Studies show that when you are struggling to balance, your performance on other mental tasks can suffer. The researchers here acknowledge that this increased cognitive demand could also be a factor. It is possible that the increased focus needed for balancing steals some mental energy that would otherwise go into planning your speech. However, if cognitive load was the main driver affecting fluency, we would expect to see changes in things like speech rate or pauses. Since we didn't see that, it suggests that perhaps the brain is really good at protecting our speech fluency, our ability to get our words out smoothly, even when other parts of our system are busy. The researchers made sure their wobble board was actually making people unstable. They used sensors to measure how much people were swaying, and they found that people did indeed sway more when they were speaking compared to when they were silent. This confirms that the wobble board was doing its job of increasing the challenge to their balance. This study has some really cool strengths. For one, they had a good number of participants, which makes their findings more reliable. And importantly, they used a face-to-face interaction task, the word-guessing game. This is more like how we talk in everyday life compared to just reading sentences or making isolated sounds. It adds more real-world relevance. But like all studies, it has limitations because people were talking spontaneously. It was hard to control exactly what sounds they made. This meant they couldn't look at super detailed aspects of speech, like the exact way vowels are formed. They focused on broader acoustic measures. Also, they didn't analyze the gestures people made. And gestures can also affect balance and speech. And importantly, the participants were mostly young, healthy university students. So we need to be careful about saying these findings apply to everyone, especially older adults or people with balance issues. What does this all mean for us? Well, it highlights how interconnected our bodies and our voices are. Our speech isn't just coming from our mouths, it is supported by our whole body. Even subtle physical demands can influence the acoustic qualities of our voice. It is like your body is subtly tuning your voice to help you maintain stability, and it is fascinating that our speech fluency, our ability to get our thoughts out clearly and without stumbling, seems to be protected. Even when our bodies are working overtime to stay balanced, our brains prioritize keeping our speech flowing smoothly. This suggests that speech fluency might be a more robustly controlled aspect of speech production than its acoustic qualities. Future research could explore how these effects might differ in older adults or in people with different types of balance challenges. They could also look more closely at how gestures interact with balance and speech. It is a reminder that when we're trying to communicate, our whole physical being is involved, and understanding these connections can tell us a lot about the amazing complexity of human communication. What do you think about these findings? Does it make sense to you that wobbling might change your voice? Let us know in the comments below, and if you found this interesting, be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more fascinating science breakdowns, and share this video with a friend who might find it interesting. We'll see you in the next one.